Let's take a look at the innovation and entrepreneurship section of the exam now. One of the challenges that students faced in this section is that apart from some commonsensical questions, there were questions related to government schemes that were not anticipated. So this time around, please pay attention to government schemes as well. And of course, we will be presenting the answers to the questions that people saw last year. The first question here is pretty easy. A person who improves an existing business is called. Now we know what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur launches a new business idea or a new business. However, a person who brings about changes or improvements within a business is called an intrapreneur, which is the fourth option. Now, even if you look at the remaining options, it's unlikely that any of them would be the answer. That is why we would say that this is a fairly commonsensical question where you should definitely get to option 4. Now here we have a fairly easy question, but there are two options that could be close for some people. For a project to be viable, the first necessary condition is. So what does viability mean? Here it means that it should be possible or practical to launch that project. Let's now take a look at our options. That it should have a market. Let's think about it. If there is no market for the product or the service that we are launching, then should we even try to launch it? Well, maybe not. So the first option could be our answer. The second one says that it should have government support. Now we know that there are a lot of enterprises that could be successful without active support from the government. Now here, of course, we should not do anything that goes against the laws of the government, and we should follow the rules, but that is a different thing altogether. Government support here means that the government is actively supporting you either in terms of providing infrastructure or providing financing, and we know that that is not necessary. So 2 can be eliminated as an option. The third one, that its expected return should be greater than bank rate. Now here this concept of expected return is slightly hypothetical. Yes, it is something that we can calculate, but please understand that the expected return concept cannot be taken at face value. So even if the expected return is lower than bank rate, it does not always mean that the project that we are undertaking is absolutely useless. So it's not absolutely necessary that expected return has to be greater than the bank rate. So 3 is also not our answer. The fourth one, that it should be based on tried and tested technology. Again, we know that certain businesses which are very innovative could be launching new technology in the first place. So we don't have to use tried and tested technology. So we go back to our first option. There has to be a market, otherwise there is no purpose of that particular project. So option 1 becomes our answer. Now this is a question that we should be able to answer because the BRICS countries have been around for quite some time. I will show you the list of countries that are typically known as the BRICS countries. So first of all, it's an intergovernmental organization. The original purpose of this organization was to identify investment opportunities within the group. However, now the scope of BRICS has expanded. It also now includes more countries than it did earlier. So the original 4 countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, now has expanded to include South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE. Now, looking at this list, obviously we can say that our answer has to be option 2. Question 4 has to do with motivation theory. Now, when I think of motivation theory, certain names come to mind. For example, Abraham Maslow, and there is one more person, McClelland. Now, this particular group of options actually is more relevant to McClelland's theory. McClelland has said that every person is motivated by power, affiliation, or achievement needs. It is not necessary that all of these needs are equally dominant. One could be more dominant than the other. And once you identify what drives a person, then you could possibly find some way to motivate that person to contribute their best. Now, let's understand what each of these needs are all about. The need for achievement usually is high in a person who has or who takes a lot of personal responsibility for completing a task. They are focused on personal improvement. They also seek feedback. They also like to undertake moderate risks. If a task is too easy or it is too difficult, they are unlikely to be interested because moderately challenging tasks are possible to accomplish and they also give them a feeling of achievement. So, if I look at the question, Which of these theories involve taking a moderate amount of risk as a function of skill and not chance? It would definitely relate to the need for achievement. So we have our answer, but we should also understand what the other needs are all about. Need for affiliation. Of course, we know what affiliation is. A person with high need for affiliation is going to be looking for acceptance and friendship. They like to work with others in a group. And usually, therefore, they're likely to conform because they don't want to be rejected by others. Now, a person with high need for power is looking to influence other people. So, they're usually going to be competitive. Once we have understood those needs, it's fairly easy to say that our answer must be need for achievement because the others do not really focus on skill building. Now, let's take a look at question 5. Which of the following is not a legitimate way of bringing a new business idea to market? So, you want to launch a new business. In which of these ways can you do that? Can you do it through a startup? Well, yes, a startup is in fact a very common way of launching a new business idea. A startup is a company in the initial stages of business, which means that usually it will have high costs and limited revenue, which is why a lot of startups actually look for some kind of funding so that they can stay on the ground until the revenue picks up. Let's take a look at business plan. Now, usually a business plan refers to a document that describes how the goals of an organization or a company might be achieved. But let's understand that this is a document that is going to be used by an established company. This is not necessarily a way to bring a new business idea to market. So option 2 could be our answer. Then we have a buyout. A buyout, which is also known as an acquisition, it involves acquiring controlling interest in a company. Why would you want to do that? Probably because you want to have greater influence in terms of what the company is doing. So a buyout could also be a way of bringing a new business idea to market. And finally, we have franchise. Franchise is a business model in which the owner licenses its operations. It could be in terms of product, branding, knowledge, lots of things, in exchange for a franchise fee. So when I want to launch a new business, I could also use a franchise model. Therefore, my answer will have to be a business plan, which is a document and not necessarily a way to launch a business. Now, here is a question that people might have had a little bit of trouble with because this relates to a government scheme. What is the full form of EPCG? Of course, it's possible to guess, but we do need to know what this is all about. So, EPCG stands for Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme. What is this about? It is to make India more competitive in the field of manufacturing. The objective of this scheme is to allow the import of capital goods either at zero customs duty or at a concessional rate. Now, capital goods are obviously those that will allow you to produce more goods within the country. So now you understand how this scheme makes sense and how it is supposed to increase the manufacturing competitiveness of our country. So the answer here will obviously be option 1, export promotion capital goods. Let's take a look at this fairly easy question. Blank entrepreneurs suffer losses as they refuse to make any modifications in the existing production models. Now, if we only look at the words, I believe we could arrive at the answer. Let's take a look at the first one, drone. Now, of course, we know about the flying drones, but if we describe a person as a drone, usually it means that they're fairly boring. So this could be our answer if you're going about it in terms of vocabulary. Passionate entrepreneurs are unlikely to refuse change because they want to see the success of their business. Imitative entrepreneurs. The word suggests that they're more likely to imitate rather than suffer losses. Possessive entrepreneurs, I'm not sure whether that kind of entrepreneur exists, but let's understand the various types of entrepreneurs that we normally see. Innovating entrepreneurs, they think outside the box. They want to challenge the existing structure of the market and they're always looking for fresh and original ideas. Now, innovating entrepreneurs, therefore, are risk takers. They are likely to put something out there which does not exist at present. Imitative entrepreneurs, as the name suggests, they're likely to follow the successful models. They're not likely to take undue risk, so slightly risk averse. Fabian entrepreneurs, these are people who believe in slow and steady growth. So they want to ensure that the foundation of that enterprise is strong and they deliberately control the growth of the business. And finally, we have the drone entrepreneurs who stick to traditional methods and they resist the adoption of new technology. So clearly our answer here is going to be drone entrepreneurs. Question 8 is fairly easy. Entrepreneurs have to deal with. Now, when you're launching a business, you have to deal with many types of uncertainties. There are some that are a part of the business, and then there are some which are beyond your control, which are known as external uncertainties. Let's take a look at a few examples. So, internal uncertainties might involve your own people. For example, attrition, training, hiring the wrong kind of people perhaps. It could also relate to infrastructure or technology issues. So an entrepreneur will have to deal with these things. But an entrepreneur will also have to account for external uncertainties. Any changes in market conditions, economic conditions, political conditions, and of course, natural disasters. So the answer therefore would have to be both external and internal uncertainties. This one is a slightly tough question. In fact, I had to do a lot of background reading to figure out this one. Let's take a look at our first statement. Which of the following statements is true? Technical feasibility is not required in case of hospital projects. Now, even if we don't quite know what technical feasibility is, I don't see any reason why hospital projects will not require such a feasibility study. But let's anyway understand what it is. It is an assessment of whether a proposed project can be successfully implemented using the current or available technology. And I think this would be very relevant in the case of hospitals because medical technology has to be available if I want to offer certain services to my patients. So, A cannot be my answer. Pattern of financing is ignored while computing cost of capital. Definitely not. The cost of capital is the return that a company needs to achieve in order to justify a project. So, it's like a minimum rate of return. If we are not meeting this requirement, then the project may not really be a good idea. But whenever we compute the cost of capital, we obviously look at the capital structure. For example, how much equity and how much debt. So we cannot say that the pattern of financing is ignored, which means that B cannot be my answer. Now, the moment I realize that A and B cannot be my answers, I can eliminate a few options. For example, option 1 is gone and option 3 is gone, but I still have to look at the remaining. C says CPM is superior to PERT in some situations. Now, a lot of us may not be familiar with these terms. Both of these are project management techniques. So I'm just going to give you a very brief description. So PERT, which stands for Project Evaluation and Review Technique, normally suitable for projects that involve R&D, research and development. CPM or Critical Path Method is normally used for construction projects. And of course, the suitability is based on the pros and cons of each of these methods. So yes, we can say that in some situations, CPM is superior to PERT. So C is true. D says infrastructure projects are ideally financed through long-term sources. This also makes sense because infrastructure projects require a lot of expenditure and the project itself has a very long life cycle. So it doesn't really make sense to rely on short-term financing. So D is also true. Now let's look at E. Cost of internally generated funds is 0. See, whenever you generate funds internally, let's say that you don't borrow from a bank or you don't really ask for equity, nevertheless, there is always an opportunity cost involved. So, the cost of using internally generated funds is equal to the opportunity cost of investing these funds in the next best alternative. So, the cost is not 0. Therefore, E is not true, which means that I have to go back to C and D and my answer becomes option 4, C and D only. Now, question 10 again is about a government scheme, specifically the Mudra Scheme. We have to figure out what is the limit up to which the loan is offered under the scheme. So let's take a look. So the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, it is a scheme for providing loans up to 10 lakh to non-corporate, non-farm, small and micro enterprises. Now, in this scheme, you can apply to a commercial bank, an RRB, a small finance bank, and you can apply to any of these entities for a Mudra loan. Nevertheless, the limit is up to 10 lakhs, which means that my answer is going to be option 2, 10. This question is asking us what the legal term for brand is. Let's take a look at all the options here. So a patent is normally an exclusive right to an invention. A patent is granted for a designated period of time. A license is the permission to own or use something. A trademark, in fact, is very similar to a brand in that it is a name or a symbol that is used by a seller to identify goods, services, or processes as belonging to it. And finally, we have TOM, which stands for Target Operating Model. Now, this is a blueprint of a company's business vision, which drives the company to a new and better way of working. So ultimately, our answer will have to be trademark. Question 12 here says, entrepreneurship can best be described as. Now, this one is a little tricky
because most of us understand the word entrepreneurship as setting up a business. So I believe that most of us are going to pick option 1. However, that's not the correct answer. When we read option 1, it says process that requires setting up a business. So it's not a required thing. It is just the process of setting up a business. So we might fault option 1 on the basis of this one tiny thing. But I would still say that this question is slightly vague. So let's take a look at the remaining options as well. When we start a business, the idea here is that we want to introduce something new into the market. So in a way, entrepreneurship will involve some degree of innovation. Keeping this in mind, if we evaluate options 2, 3, and 4, we might get to another answer. Option 2 says taking a significant risk. Yes, entrepreneurship does involve risk, but we cannot describe entrepreneurship as the process of taking risk. So option 2 is out. Having a strong vision, again, this is one of the qualities of an entrepreneur, but we would not say that this is the overall description. So effectively, this question is asking you what is the essence of entrepreneurship? And option 4 gives us the essence, a process involving innovation and value creation. So yes, an entrepreneur is a person who sets up a business, but the whole idea of setting up a business is to offer something into the market that probably does not exist. So option 4 is the official answer. Now here, we are saying in the context of market feasibility analysis, the analyst should consider the following factor as a priority. This question is fairly commonsensical in the sense that if you read the terms, market feasibility analysis, feasibility means that we are considering the viability or the practicality of a business, and market suggests that we are evaluating the market. So keeping this in mind, I can probably still narrow down my options to options 1 and 4. I would eliminate 2 and 3. But let's take a look at the official definitions. So in general, a feasibility study is a detailed analysis of all the factors that would determine the success of a project. If the feasibility study says that this project is good to go and it might succeed, then the project is good to go. However, you need to evaluate several parameters. For example, there's technical feasibility, financial feasibility, market feasibility, and organizational feasibility. Each of these involves certain different components. Technical feasibility usually refers to whether the technology is available for us to offer the product or service that we want. If such technology is not available, then the project is not technically feasible. Financial feasibility, of course, involves estimating the cost and whether the return will cover the cost and probably give us a little bit more. Market feasibility, of course, is going to look at demand, industry as a whole, competition, growth prospects, and so on. So, as I said, we should be able to narrow down our options to 2 of them, target market attractiveness and market leadership. So, let's stick to this for now. Organizational feasibility is basically to do with the management structure, the management team, the kind of people that we will require to run the business. So, if we look at maybe option 3 here, this is going to be related to organizational feasibility and not so much market feasibility. And that is why we said that option 3 is fairly easy to eliminate. And option 2 is going to be related to financial feasibility. Now, between 1 and 4, market leadership, though it will be a factor that we will consider, that is not priority. What is priority is whether a market is attractive enough for us to want to enter it. And therefore, option 4 should be eliminated and option 1 should be the choice that we pick at the end. This question is fairly specific, and I believe that it might be difficult to answer if you have not read anything about Gary Hamel. So, first of all, the question is asking us, according to Gary Hamel, which one of the following propositions is one of the 4 pillars to create value for the company and the customer? Let's first find out about Gary Hamel. So he's an American management consultant. He's founded Strategos, which is an international management consulting firm. And if we look at all these options, the one that Gary Hamel has stressed upon is management innovation. As the name suggests, this is innovation in terms of management principles and processes, which he believes can provide competitive advantage to a company. So the answer to question number 14 is going to be option 2, management innovation. Now let's take a look at question 15. There are a lot of questions on innovation and entrepreneurship, and you need to be familiar with these terms. So I'm going to explain all of them as a part of the solution. Which type of innovation seeks to make better product to target the high end of the market? Let's take a look at what each of these terms means. Sustaining innovation is somewhat similar to what some of our smartphone companies do. It means making incremental improvements to an existing product so that you can sell it at a higher price to your best customers. Low-end disruptive innovation, as it suggests, it's low-end, but it is still disruptive. What they do is that they offer a simpler and a more affordable solution to underserved customers. And therefore, they're able to identify and enter a segment which probably no one was catering to earlier. Now, 3 is actually similar to that, but when we say new market disruptive innovation, this is not necessarily at the lower end, it could be at any segment. This is creating and then claiming a new segment within an existing market. Quantity-based innovation, honestly, I did not find too much about it. Most people stress on quality. Now, if we look for the answer, we would see that making better products is definitely related to sustaining innovation, and therefore option 1 becomes our answer. Here we have a fairly easy question, and I'm saying easy because it's fairly simple to figure out the answer even if you're not very familiar with the terms. An entrepreneur who is the owner of more than one business is called. Now, we are familiar with the term portfolio. A portfolio usually has multiple assets. So it kind of makes sense that the answer could be a portfolio entrepreneur, someone who's invested in multiple businesses. An intrapreneur is a term that we have already covered. But on the whole, an intrapreneur is also known as a corporate entrepreneur. And this means that they look for innovation within an existing organization instead of setting up a brand new business altogether. So we definitely cannot say that intrapreneur is the answer. Corporate entrepreneur, as I said, is interchangeable with the term intrapreneur in most cases. Owner entrepreneur is not something that we have seen used very frequently, but yes, it would probably mean someone who owns a business and has also started it, if I really had to guess. So the answer here, of course, is option 1, portfolio entrepreneur. Question 17 here looks like a very easy question, but it may not be, because it's actually asking you for the root word that gave rise to the English word entrepreneur. So the word entrepreneur has French origins. It is derived from the French word entreprendre, which means to do something or to undertake. Now, if we know this, then we have the right answer. In case we don't know this and you're guessing, then I think a lot of us might pick up option 3. However, the answer here is option 2 because the root word means to undertake or to do something. Question 18 is fairly commonsensical. As business grows, time management continues to be an issue, but the entrepreneur's major concern usually becomes. This is something that you need to think about, and if you think about it, you should arrive at the answer. Setting goals would not be the entrepreneur's major concern because this is something that can be done periodically. Setting goals is not really difficult, it is achieving them that is difficult. The second one could definitely be a challenge, finding, retaining and motivating qualified employees, because if we don't have the right people, then we will not attain our business goals. Measuring performance. Measuring performance again is not a very complex task because we have multiple techniques now available. So if we really need to think about which of these areas is probably going to cause the greatest worry for an entrepreneur, we would have to say that it is option 2, because the first and the third are possible to do using the techniques available. However, option 4 of course cannot be the answer because we have discarded options 1 and 3. So our answer would have to be option 2. Question 19 is also something we can answer with a little bit of thought. The business plan of a venture must show consistent but manageable projected growth because. So why do we kind of need steady growth is what it's asking you. Let's look at our first option. Many entrepreneurs fail after expanding too quickly. If you expand too quickly, you might fail, which is why it makes sense to have consistent but manageable projected growth. So option 1 looks very likely. Inventors want to see quick growth, but this does not really align with what the question is saying, consistent but manageable projected growth. So we discard option 2. Banks are interested in profits, not expenses, I believe. Now here we are not really talking about revenue or profit in the question, we are only talking about the growth of the business. The fourth option, bankers and investors prefer small companies, again does not really have anything to do with the growth of the business. Whether it is small or big,
we need to explain why consistent manageable growth is important. So option 1 becomes our answer. Let's take a look at the last question in this section. Now, this is not a particularly easy question because again, it has to do with a government scheme. The primary focus of SMILE loan of SIDBI is, it would not be very helpful to try and decode the acronyms here. So we do need to know what the scheme is all about, and here you have the details. So the Make in India Soft Loan Fund for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. This is the full form of SMILE. As you can see, this scheme was introduced to offer loans on soft terms to MSME enterprises to help them set themselves up to meet the debt equity ratio and also to pursue opportunities for expansion. So on the whole, the MSME sector in India is a little finance starved, and this scheme was supposed to make things better for them. We also need to understand what a soft loan is. It's a loan that is offered on favorable terms to the borrower. So you could offer it at very low interest rate or even at zero interest, and the terms of the loan would be very, very lenient. Usually, we would offer a soft loan to promote someone's growth or development, which in this case would be the MSME sector. And the full form of SIDBI is Small Industries Development Bank of India. So now you know everything there is to know about this scheme. Now, if we look at our options, the first option talks about upgradation of machinery. While the funds could possibly be directed towards that purpose, this is not the primary focus of the scheme. The primary focus is obviously to help meet the debt equity ratio and to help MSMEs set themselves up. So option 1 is eliminated. Option 2 is on point, so this is likely our answer. The third one, very similar to the first option, technology upgradation and expansion could possibly be one of the things that the enterprise is able to accomplish, but it's not the primary focus of the scheme. And one-time non-recurring loan for startups does not even mention the MSME sector, so this cannot be our answer. Our answer would have to be option 2. So with this, we come to the end of the innovation and entrepreneurship section. As you can see, there is a lot of theory related to both innovation and entrepreneurship that you need to cover, including the root words and so on. And in addition to that, please make a note of the government schemes that are meant to help enterprise in India.